And Montgomery's smile widened. He now had a set, and Eastgate's chances of winning dwindled to a measly 2%. The crowd groaned. This looked like the end of the road for the young Dane. But poker is a cruel game. Just when you think you've got it locked up, the river card can turn your world upside down.
All right, welcome back everybody. Grab a seat, because this one is a ride. In 2008, nearly 7,000 people paid $10,000 each for a shot at the biggest prize in poker, and the person who walked out with it was a 22-year-old kid from Denmark who had described himself in an interview as lazy and unproductive. They called him the Iceman, and not as a compliment about his nerve, but because his face gave you absolutely nothing. What you are about to watch is a handful of hands where he takes apart professionals who had been playing longer than he had been alive, and one of those hands he wins holding the single worst cards at the table. Stick with me all the way through, because the run he goes on gets stranger the further it goes, and the last hand in here is the one people still argue about. While you are watching, do me a favor and drop a comment telling me what country or city you are watching from. I genuinely love reading those, and it is wild seeing how far this stuff travels. Okay, let's get into it.
His exit signaled that Eastgate wasn't just there to make up the numbers. This kid was here to win. The next play came against Dennis Phillips, a trucking account manager turned poker sensation who was stealing the spotlight. With a legion of fans in red St. Louis Cardinals hats chanting his name, Dennis had been commanding the table for hours. His strategy? Unstoppable aggression. He raised, re-raised, and shoved with the confidence of a player who believed the cards would bend to his will. While Phillips huffed and puffed, the Iceman sat motionless, his face not showing any hint of emotion. He wasn't just waiting for a hand, he was waiting for the hand. And then it came. Pocket aces. The best starting hand in poker. Most players would slam all their chips into the pot here, screaming all in. But Eastgate? He didn't even blink. Instead, he tossed in a 1.4 million raise, a modest bet designed to look weak. To Phillips, this was an invitation. Eastgate knew Phillips couldn't resist attacking a small raise, especially with his stack and ego ballooning. Sure enough, Phillips glanced at his cards, ace-jack suited, and pounced. He re-raised to 3.2 million, flexing his aggression like a heavyweight throwing a jab. The 22-year-old didn't flinch. He flat-called, masking the strength of his hand. The message to Phillips? I'm weak, come at me. The flop landed. Deuce, king, deuce. A dry, unremarkable hand that missed Phillips completely. No flush draws, no straight possibilities, just a lone king staring back at him. Phillips checked, a rare moment of hesitation. Eastgate saw his opening. He bet 3 million, a small but careful stab at the pot. To Phillips, this smelled like a bluff. After all, why would a player with a strong hand bet so timidly? In Phillips's mind, Eastgate was trying to steal the pot with air. So Phillips did what Phillips does. He increased. He raised to 7 million, slamming his chips down with the confidence of a man holding a king. His goal? To bully Eastgate out of the pot. But Eastgate wasn't bluffing. He wasn't even sweating. He'd spent hours studying Phillips's play, the way he overvalued aggression, the way he mistook boldness for brilliance. This wasn't just a poker hand, it was a psychological chess match. Eastgate paused for a beat, then shoved all in. The room buzzed. Phillips's face drained of color. His ace-jack was weak, and now he was staring down a bet that could badly hurt his stack. Finally, he folded. The crowd roared as the 22-year-old quietly stacked his chips, never revealing his aces. Behind him, his Danish fans started singing, which echoed through the theater.
That was the one table.
I'll say this, I prefer it to the tomahawk chop. Oh, sounds pretty good.
And with that pot, Peter Eastgate does move to the top of the leaderboard.
Everyone at the table got the message. This kid wasn't just playing cards, he was playing the players. But the real showcase of Eastgate's skill came against Scott Montgomery in what would become one of the most dramatic hands of the tournament. Montgomery, a Canadian pro with a reputation for clawing his way back from the brink, was down to his last chips. He became desperate, and in poker, that can often lead to chaos. Eastgate, sitting comfortably with a mountain of chips, peeked at his cards. Pocket sixes. It wasn't a monster hand, but it was more than enough. Montgomery looked down at ace-3, a hand that's far from premium but good enough to gamble with when your stack is on life support. With the blinds climbing and his tournament life hanging by a thread, Montgomery did what any short-stack player would do. He shoved all in. Eastgate didn't hesitate. He slid his chips forward and the table braced for the showdown. The flop came, ace-4 queen. Montgomery's fans cheered loudly. He'd paired his ace, and Eastgate was now a huge underdog in this hand. The Canadian pro allowed himself a small smile. He was 2 cards away from doubling up and staying alive. But the Iceman didn't flinch. He wasn't out of the hand yet. The turn brought another ace, and Montgomery's smile widened. He now had a set, and Eastgate's chances of winning dwindled to a measly 2%. The crowd groaned. This looked like the end of the road for the young Dane. But poker is a cruel game. Just when you think you've got it locked up, the river card can turn your world upside down. The dealer burned a card and slowly revealed the river. The room exploded. Eastgate supporters leaped to their feet. Montgomery, who had been moments away from doubling up, slumped back in his chair, his face a mask of disbelief. Even Eastgate, normally ice-cold and emotionless, stood up from his seat to celebrate with his Danish supporters. The poker gods had blessed him, turning a near-certain loss into a miraculous win. Montgomery's dream of a WSOP title was over, and Eastgate's stack grew even larger. As players fell one by one, Eastgate's stack kept growing. But it wasn't just luck. His reading ability was incredible.
This right here is the moment that changes how you see the entire final table, and it has almost nothing to do with the cards. Peter Eastgate picks up the best starting hand in poker, and he makes the smallest raise he can get away with. Here's what most people never notice. A tiny bet from a quiet player does not look like strength to someone who has been bullying a table for 6 straight hours. It looks like an opening. The narrator said this: he wasn't just waiting for a hand, he was waiting for the hand. I would push that even further, because the waiting was the easy half. The hard half was engineering a situation where Dennis Phillips walks in on his own and feels clever while doing it. Let me break down why that matters. Dennis built his whole run on volume and pressure, and that style prints money right up until one person decides to use it as a handle to grab you by. The narrator described the setup like this: the message to Phillips, "I'm weak, come at me." Reading a person that accurately, under those lights, at 22 years old, is the entire story. And you have to understand the stakes attached to that read. He is risking a life-changing amount of money on a prediction about somebody else's ego. The narrator called it this. This wasn't just a poker hand, it was a psychological chess match. That is the only honest description of what happened. Then he wins the pot and refuses to show the cards. No victory lap, no reveal. Everyone at that table now spends the rest of the night guessing what he actually had, and that uncertainty follows them into every decision they make afterward. The narrator put it perfectly. This kid wasn't just playing cards, he was playing the players. And if that hand shows you his brain, the Scott Montgomery hand shows you something else entirely. Peter gets his chips in ahead, watches the board turn completely against him, and drops to a 2% chance of surviving. 2%. Then the river saves him, and for the only time all night, the Iceman stands up out of his chair.
Another hand began with Demidov in the small blind, holding King 7 suited. It wasn't a powerhouse hand, but in heads-up or short-handed play, a suited king can be gold. Demidov, ever the opportunist, decided to limp in, a move that signaled caution but also masked his intentions. Eastgate, in the big blind, looked down at 3-2 offsuit, one of the worst possible starting hands. He checked his option, and the 2 went to the flop. The flop came 7-3-6. Demidov hit top pair with his 7, while Eastgate spiked bottom pair with his 3. On the surface, Demidov was ahead, but Eastgate wasn't out of the fight. He had a pair, and in poker, even a small pair can turn into a monster if the cards go your way. Demidov checked, an interesting move for a player with top pair. Was he setting a trap, or was he unsure of Eastgate's strength? Eastgate, ever the predator, smelled opportunity. He bet $850,000, a small but deliberate wager designed to test Demidov's resolve. Demidov called, but the turn brought fireworks. Demidov now had a 2-pair, kings and 7s, and was a 19-1 favorite to win the hand. The crowd leaned in, sensing a pivotal moment. But instead of betting, Demidov checked again. This was a critical mistake. Eastgate, holding just a pair of 3s, checked back, buying himself a free river card that would change everything. Eastgate's bottom pair had turned into a set of 3s. Demidov, still holding 2-pair, bet half the pot, trying to extract value. But Eastgate wasn't just calling, he was planning. He paused. Then he raised to $5.5 million. Demidov appeared confident just moments ago, but now doubt crept in.
Doesn't talk much, but his chips never shut up. Demidov now trying to get a read on the 22-year-old. And at this stage of the championship, every bet, every decision so magnified.
Eastgate and Demidov have played a lot together at this main event, but Eastgate is one tricky character.
Is he bluffing? Demidov must have wondered. Or does he have threes? The Russian pro agonized over the decision. After what felt like an eternity, Demidov folded. The crowd erupted.
Demidov at a critical moment against a strong opponent. And he lays down kings up.
Great fold from the 27-year-old Russian.
So Peter Eastgate picks up a couple of million new chips and inches a bit closer to Demidov. But right now, the chip leader is indeed playing like a champion at this main event.
Eastgate, ever the Iceman, quietly stacked his chips. With the game getting more intense,
Let me tell you why the next hand is my favorite of the entire tournament, because on paper it should not exist. Peter Eastgate is sitting in the big blind with 3-2 offsuit. That is the trash you throw away without thinking about it. He is only in the hand because nobody raised him out of it, and he still finds a way to win a pot worth more than most people earn in a decade. Here's the part that blows my mind. Ivan Demidov flops top pair and checks. Then he makes 2 pair on the turn, becomes a massive favorite, and checks again. The narrator flagged it correctly when he said this. This was a critical mistake. Every time Ivan declines to bet, he hands a free card to a man who needs exactly one specific card left in the deck, and that card arrives. Now think about the pressure Ivan is under. The commentator nailed the read on Peter when he said this. Doesn't talk much, but his chips never shut up. That is the whole problem with facing somebody who gives you nothing at all. There is no tell to work with, so your brain fills the silence with whatever you already fear. The same commentator added this. Eastgate is one tricky character. You have to understand the era this is happening in too. 5 years earlier, an amateur qualified online for a tiny entry fee and won this exact event, and the field exploded from a few hundred players into thousands of hopefuls swinging at the same dream. By 2008, that room was full of people who learned the game on a screen instead of in a card room, and that generation played differently. Peter is the cleanest example of it. So when Ivan finally releases 2 pair, the commentator calls it this. Great fold from the 27-year-old Russian. And he is right. It is a great fold. But great folds still lose you the pot, and Peter walks off with millions in chips, holding the worst starting hand at the table.
Eastgate found himself heads up in a pot against Elon Schwarz, a strong opponent with a knack for survival. Eastgate looked down at pocket 5s, a modest hand by most standards, but in the hands of a player like Eastgate, even 5s could be deadly. He raised to $1.5 million, a standard opening bet designed to thin the field. Elon Schwarz peeked at his cards. Ace-10. It was a decent hand, but not one you typically go to war with. Schwarz hesitated. He didn't want to play this hand, but the small blind forced his hand. Reluctantly, he called. The flop came Deuce-King-8, a dry board that missed Schwarz completely. His Ace-10 was now ace-high, and Eastgate's pocket 5s were still ahead. Schwarz checked, hoping to see a free card. Eastgate, ever the strategist, checked behind. This wasn't a passive move, it was a trap. Eastgate knew Schwarz was capable of bluffing, and by checking, he invited Schwarz to take a shot at the pot. But Schwarz, perhaps sensing danger, stayed quiet. The turn, another king. Now the board read Deuce-King-8-King. Eastgate's 5s were now 2 pair, kings and 5s, while Schwarz was still holding ace-high. Schwarz checked again, and Eastgate pounced. He bet $1.7 million, a small but thoughtful wager designed to extract value. Schwarz, now in a tough spot, made the call. It was a reluctant decision, the kind of move you make when you're hoping for a miracle on the river. The river? 5 of diamonds. Eastgate's 2 pair transformed into a full house, 5s full of kings. Schwarz, still holding ace-high, checked. Eastgate didn't hesitate. He bet $4.6 million, a massive overbet that screamed strength. Schwarz, now hopeless, shoved all in. It was a bold move, but also a reckless one. With ace-high and 4 kings on the board, Schwarz was essentially bluffing into a monster. Eastgate didn't even think too much. I call, he said, flipping over his full house. Schwartz's face fell as he mucked his cards. The crowd burst into cheers, but Eastgate showed less emotion, like it was just another day at the office.
Ball. Schwarz hates that.
Ace high.
And that's not nearly good enough. With a full house, Peter Eastgate sends Schwarz to the rail. Fourth place and almost $3.8 million for Elon Schwarz.
If Eastgate doesn't hit the full house, maybe that check raise all-in works. And when he had the chip lead, I had visions of Elon Schwarz winning and moving to Mars.
The Elon Schwarz hand is where the pattern finally becomes undeniable, because Peter runs the same play a third time in one night and it works again. He flops the best hand and checks it back. The narrator explained the logic like this. This wasn't a passive move, it was a trap. And I want you to sit with that, because checking a winning hand feels wrong to almost every amateur player alive. It feels like leaving money on the table. What it actually does is convince your opponent the pot is sitting there unclaimed, and a pot that looks unclaimed is one people talk themselves into fighting for. Then the board pairs, the river completes a full house, and Elon Schwarz pushes everything forward, holding nothing whatsoever. The narrator summed up the position like this. Schwarz was essentially bluffing into a monster. Here's what most people never notice about a moment like that. Elon did not lose his tournament because he was reckless. He lost it because the story Peter had been telling all night was finally paying off. Every quiet check, every small bet, every hand he refused to show had stacked up into an image, and Elon made his final decision against that image rather than against the man sitting in front of him. The commentator delivered the verdict completely flat when he said this. That's not nearly good enough for the full house. And I love that the booth is already joking about it seconds later, saying this. I had visions of Elon Schwarz winning and moving to Mars. That is what elimination looks like at this level. One decision, and then a very long flight home with almost $4 million and a lifetime of wondering. What genuinely stays with me is the temperament. A 22-year-old sits in the most watched seat in the game, gets absolutely no reaction from the crowd, gives no reaction back, and simply keeps making the correct choice over and over, while everybody around him gets louder, more emotional, and more desperate. That is rare at any age. Most people crack under a fraction of that attention, and he had cameras on his face for 3 straight days. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.